Okay. Thank you guys for being here today. Apologies for the graphic design. The MEU template somehow didn't work. So we're going to go with this very, very cool and smooth design. Let us know. So I'm Cláudio. Today I'm here in the quality of former participants coordinator of MEU Strasbourg 2017. And
I'm Miguel, and I'm here as a former coordinator of MEU Lisbon 2018.
Great. So basically, in this overview, we'll try to give you a participants coordination insight on both projects with Erasmus Plus funding and without Erasmus Plus funding. And you'll see that the difference between these two projects are not that starking, but when it comes to bureaucracy, there are additional criteria that you will have to respect when it comes to dealing with Erasmus Plus. I'll go deeper into that one, and Miguel will tell you how basically you don't have to do any of that if you go with your own separate model of funding, even though it comes with other constraints.
Yes, you have to cater to another bunch of financial challenges that arise with not having Erasmus Plus funding.
So basically, to start, what do you think participants coordination is? So could have article in the air, please, short sentences. What do you think this is all about? Any former participants coordinators here in the room? There you are. There you are.
How would you define your work in the phrase? That's
Coordination.
That's so shocking.
Anything that doesn't consist in reverse into the passive voice. So
what am I supposed to say?
That's good.
Receiving applications, selecting applicants, providing them all the information beforehand, which they need before the conference, and then during the conference, be kind of the contact person.
Okay.
Also applying, or help them to apply for visa.
Yes. Very important. Anyone else?
Don't you also put roles for people?
Yes. Very well. Anything else?
Basically hours and hours and hours of Excel tables.
Yes.
Yes.
You'll do that. No Excel, just find out. Okay. So, anything else? So, that's all we do?
What about being the face to the participants, the face of the project?
There we go. And I think to begin with, that's probably the most important part. You are, as participants coordinator, the human face of a machine of sometimes, when this comes to Strasbourg, 60 plus organizers. And you are the essential liaison person to the participants. You are the organizing team for the participants, and the organizing team knows that you are the channel vis-a-vis to the participants. So you have a unique role bridging the gap between these two universes, which are daily in the imminence of clashing during a conference, and it is your role to keep them as apart as possible to make sure that they don't collide. So, next slide please, Marco. We're going to go into the details. So what do you do when you're nominated participants coordinator? Assuming that you get decent handover from your predecessor, which is always essential because, let's face it, it's MEU. Most of these things have already been done by someone else. Everything has been invented, more or less. So when it comes to participants coordination, a decent handover and decent cooperation with other branches is essential. A lot of work will be already done for you, but it does need a human touch from you in order to do what needs to be done, which is adequate the pool of participants that you will get to the unique characteristics of the conference that you will organize. And that only you, as the participants coordinator, can have this general overview of how to merge these two roles together in order to allow this conference to prepare. So I'll prepare a selection. I'll go into the first part, which is Erasmus Plus application. This is the most important part when you start, because if you do have a project which is Erasmus Plus funded, that means your role will start earlier than expected. Normally people think participants coordinator only starts working somewhere along halfway in the conference. Only when the applications start rating in, that's when he comes in, while the rest of the team starts holding all the heavy lifting the months in advance. That is not the case if you do an Erasmus Plus. Next slide, please. So essential word bubble. So when you do your application, and some people here already have done that. So you need to first determine what are the eligible countries for your application. So these are the 55 countries and member states and EEA and neighborhood partnership countries, and you need to determine how many they are. Because when it comes to selecting participants, you will need to aim at selecting participants to the conference that come from all of these countries. You will not succeed, most certainly, but you need to aim to that. It's to look good in the book. Partner organizations, so NGO registered in an eligible country, also registered in the ECA's database. We had this yesterday, so I won't go into that. And the quota. This is the number of participants for an eligible country. And here is something you have to take in consideration on the number of participants you expect to have. Normally, if you have a course that's lasting for several years, like it is Strasbourg, you do have quite a good idea of how many applications you should expect from certain countries, and you do have an idea of how to set that quota in order to make sure that one country that has, let's say, the example of Italy, 60 applicants, has a bigger quota, while a country like Malta, which was going to have 2 applicants, has a smaller quota. So, oh God. And social fund. This is a very specific Strasbourg condition, which is if you do have the Erasmus Plus, you can have a surplus which is destined to, as it is was our case, to support participants in financial need. So if a participant is unable to pay the 150 euros fee that was charged in Strasbourg in 2017, there is a possibility to apply for the social fund, and that implies sending a couple of documents to prove that the income is insufficient, and in that case, on the basis of both merit and financial need, you shall be given a reduction of the fee, a fee waiver, and eventually some travel reimbursement. But then again, that's Strasbourg particular, and you should only adopt it if necessary. So, the next slide, please, Marco. It's already there. So, important phases. Submission of the application. You need to set the quota before the application is submitted. This is very important because it's not the first time that organizers submit an application and the participants coordinator is kept in the dark about the quota. It happened before in Strasbourg, it will happen again, no doubt. So if you are organizing this kind of project, make sure, if you have been nominated participants coordinator, that the Erasmus application does not leave that email box, that inbox, before you've been the one setting the quota. Why should it be you setting this quota? Because this means that only you have access, in theory, to the numbers of the applications from the previous year. Only you have unique insight from the previous participants coordinator to determine if the quota should be set this year or that way. Only you can have the total insight of what is the expected flow of people that you might have in this conference. And you need to make that prediction so that you can end up with a filled quota as much as possible, and you don't take chances of having a disproportionate number of roles for countries that have no applicants and the other way around. So this does months before the project, and it will have an impact on the total amount. Because for every quota not filled, you will lose money. So that's a very important part to take into consideration. And so when it comes to submission of the report, that's exactly what's going to happen. When you submit the final report, you will have to check the quota that you've submitted in your application with the quota that you've actually filled. And that's when they cross this information at the national agency, that it will be checked if you met the quota or not, and that's the impact it will have in your Plus grant. So, next, preparing the application process. And next.
So, first of all, you have to create excitement around the event. So, in this point, you have to coordinate very well with the PR team. So you have to get people excited to apply, because you should aim at having 4 participants applying for each spot you give. So that's most of the time not really possible, but that is something that you should aim for and try to. So you have to work with the PR team in getting out as many advertisements and as many posts as possible regarding the event, and also working with the content team on getting interesting themes and proposals, getting interesting questions for the essays so that you get meaningful answers, because the essays that the participants fill in the application form are something that you have to, that will help you selecting them for the proper roles and not only selecting the proper participants. And also you have to make very clear what is the presentation of the roles that you'll have included in the conference. Some conferences have lobbyists, some conferences don't. All of them have journalists, MEPs, and most of them have MEPs, all of them have ministers. And also you can innovate in creating some new roles, but you have to make them very clear during the application process so that people know how to apply, what to apply for, and what suits them best. And also the application form has to be designed in a way that makes you understand what they are best for. Then you have to work a lot with the logistics team, and e.g. and the treasurer, to set the proper participation fee. So you as participants coordinator have a duty to the participants to make their best effort so that participation fee is something reasonable, something that they can pay, something that is in line with what they are being offered as participants. Of course, that has to be coordinated with all the financial hurdles of organizing the project. So there you have a duty to go and find the middle ground to get the best deal possible. Also, you have to be very clear with the treasurer to understand how many paying participants you need to have. I mean, for example, usually in all events you have participants with accommodation and without accommodation. Okay. Usually that can depend on the amount of sponsor, amount of support you get, but usually the participants with accommodation give you a certain loss, which you have to know how much it is with the treasurer, and participants without accommodation usually give you some kind of profit. So you have to define with the treasurer how much applicants with accommodation and without accommodation you can have, because that will of course have a strong influence on who can you select, because it's normal and it's almost mandatory that the level of the participants that give you profit is of course the level required is of course lower than the participants that give you a loss. That's a simple financial thing that you can agree to.
Can I just follow up on that one?
Yes.
It's very important also to demystify a concept, which is a lot of conferences believe, debating tournaments as well, especially debating tournaments. I had this experience so much. Don't have the financial foresight to understand that there is this zero margin, which is how much a participant is willing to apply to come. So it's not convenient for you to set a very high participation fee. If you are, for people with accommodation, let's say 150 euros with accommodation, and then give an almost ridiculous insignificant fee to those without accommodation. Sometimes it's better to even out and make sure that, okay, we need to maybe sustain a loss when it comes to participants with accommodation. So if accommodation of a participant, if a cost of a participant is 100 euros, we're not going to set the fee at 100 euros. Let's set it maybe at 80, and let's compensate that loss with participants that don't need accommodation. And instead of setting a fee at 20 euros, let's set it at 50. Let's set it, for instance, in Strasbourg, we set it at 50%. So a participation fee for people with accommodation would be 150, so without accommodation would be half. And this is still a fair value. It's still a lot of meals are included, and still allows you to make the price, the overall price of people who need accommodation, lower than it would have been in reality. This makes, in turn, the conference more appealing. This means more people applying. This means more people paying, and of course means.
Also, another aspect, and just finishing this little point, is you have to be aware of what the rest of the world is doing, and this is especially true in terms of MEUs. So you have to take in mind the example of Strasbourg. Okay, they are charging 150 euros for the one entire week in Strasbourg, which is a very expensive city, and it's six nights of accommodation, I think. Yes. So of course you have to take into consideration this while setting the fee for your MEU, because most of the time you're not Strasbourg. Sometimes you are, but sometimes
you're not.
Most of the time you're not. Exactly. Not. So you can charge the same as Strasbourg. So in Lisbon, for example, we went with 100 euros with five days of accommodation and all food provided. So you have to make a very good balance between what you offer and what you charge, and also seeing similar events and doing decisions based on that.
Because at the end of the day, as a participants coordinator, it is your interest, not just in a political view, to democratize MEU, make sure it's affordable for everyone. It's in your own interest to make sure that the pool of participants you get is as diverse as possible. Because the more diverse the conference is, the more nationalities, the more the diverse and the background of your applicants, the richer the conference will be, and then the overall outcome will be better. So that's how application you.
Oh, yes, of course, you should aim to have the applications ready 8 weeks before the event, so 2 months. You have to have a very strong idea of who the participants are going to be. You have to have a very strong idea of who already paid, who didn't. So even with the extension period, you should aim to have everything set and ready 2 months before.
Next slide, please.
Okay. You want to?
We already covered a bit, so maybe we can...
Yes, mainly sharing tidbits about the program as incentive for people to apply. Of course, as the participants coordinator, you have contact with all the rest of the team, so you know what's going to happen. You know what the special parties are going to be, the special visits, the special people invited. So you can share a little bit of this at some given moments, so that you can get people excited and you get the most interest from participants. So that's also it. Also, specific campaigns around the application period. You can have, sometimes you have enough applicants from one part of the world and you are missing out on other ones. So you can do a bit more focused applications in terms of that. In Lisbon, we used maps, actually. We made a world map with the countries where we had participants and the countries where we didn't. And this actually helped getting the reach to...
Just to complete on this, I want to take a question. For instance, in Strasbourg, we use Google Analytics to give us a real-time update on where the applications were coming from, but also a real-time update on the hits on our application form. So we had the data not just on the total applications, but also people that were interested in the plan to actually view the form. And this allowed us, like 1 month in advance, to know exactly which were the regions in which we had a set quota. It's very, very important when it's Erasmus Plus, in which we were completely lacking in terms of interest, not just of actual applications, but also interest. Sometimes if there's a lot of interest, you can expect, okay, applications will come later. But if there's no interest at all, okay, then we do need to start a focalized campaign on those countries. We need to start making some phone calls, getting our CLOs to work on the ground. We need to get the PR team to spend some money on Facebook ads to target specifically that particular region. And believe it or not, it works. You can really reverse a trend, how negative it can be, if you have the foresight, but also a team that doesn't have that many smart tools, that actually has the time and the focus to analyze what the trend is being, so you can prevent the situations at the end. Yeah, your question now, Susanna.
It's less of a question, more of a comment. There are actually those websites for project searching, and each country has a specific website people mostly use. So it's also nice to go for those websites, because I think for example, I look for one website, and actually the only MEU that ever appeared there was Brussels, but it's not because they put it there, because they were found. So it's also those websites look for you, but you can also like put yourself out there. So apart from Facebook, those websites also work.
The speakers list. Ignacio, Alec, you. Yes, okay, so let's go Miguel first.
Right, so the big websites, I think Brussels was on that one. It's MEU World, and that's a big one, and a lot of people visit it actually. So that's my suggestion.
Also the biggest book. Ignacio?
Yeah.
Maybe you could do some examples of what tidbits are, because I'm not really familiar with the word.
It's a little bits of the program, little information, small bits of information that you can share with the participants to generate interest. Like, you know that in MEU Madrid we're going to visit this place, or we're going to have this person speaking to us. This kind of things you can do.
This social program.
Sorry?
Yeah, the social program.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Arka?
Yeah, actually, I think it's not MEU World. I think it was MEU Planet. But anyways, it's a good thing. But yeah, like Susanna said, it's we didn't even put it there. Like we didn't know until apparently someone, like in the application form, because we asked like, where do you know, like in Facebook or anything, and they say MEU Planet, and we're like,
It is Mladi Info. Mladiinfo.eu, not MEU Planet.
Okay, yes.
But if it's also there, then it means somebody actually
they
put it without me even knowing it. So I think, I mean, like, we're still searching for the kind of like solution, but if we can kind of know as well people from there, or like basically try to find out how we know if somebody put it in their website, it would be cool, you know. But it's still an ongoing question.
Yeah,
My point was overall that each country, for example, like people from Poland look on different websites, people from Russia look on different websites, so it's really important to approach people from those countries to check on which website do they look for.
Definitely. And that's something that you have to do with your team all the time, because, for instance, now from in Lisbon, there was a very specific case, which was, there was a very good liaison with student unions, so they promoted in their own forums the conference, and all of a sudden, boom, you have an explosion of 30 applicants from Porto. And this is something that in Strasbourg was very well done, also local press, because we had a team in Strasbourg, which is the CLO team, and some people have contacts, so they get to share this information in very privileged channels, so all of a sudden it gets maximum visibility, boom, and you get it, of course.
Also a very small trick that I would like to add is people usually leave the stuff for last minute, so it's interesting to have an application period and then an extension. Because you will get a very interesting boom just before the first closing of applications, and then you get an extension, so you can get the people that are already scared because, oh my god, I forgot to apply, and then they have 2 more weeks to apply. So this is useful because it explains something.
Yeah, Strasbourg always does it. It's not something that we do. So we always get the comment, which is, oh god, are you that desperate for applications that you need to extend? No, it's just simply the fact that it's proven that it works. It works, that you create a deadline, people leave it at the last minute, and they get disencouraged because, oh my god, I forgot to apply, now I don't have the time to put a decent application, screw it. Bleep. And all of a sudden, you get, oh my god, there's 2 more weeks, and people get motivated and they redo the applications. And in my year, for instance, we had more applications during the extension than during the actual period of application. So, never believe that an extension is a bad thing. Always use that to your advantage, and always plan ahead. That you have the extension. So you have your informal deadline. So you have your formal deadline, but already plan that they're only going to close like 2 weeks later. And even then, you're not going to stop accepting applications. But that's something we're going to go into more detail soon enough. So next slide.
The application. You want to do it?
Yeah, better. Okay, building a functioning application platform. So this is the part where Robert should be here because he would tell you everything about the Vita desk. Basically, the forum. And it basically is a software that Vita has developed for all the branches. It will basically serve not just membership applications for the new federal structure, in which there is a unique form that automatically reroutes the membership to all the branches, so it's one centralized form, which is GDPR compliant. It is a form that was developed also specifically to deal with MEU applications. So it's free, and it's something we want to give to the branches so that everyone can use the same form, so we can create a standard model of application, so that when a participant applies for an MEU, he already has some kind of prediction of what he's going to encounter, with the benefits, of course, for branches, that you don't have to use Yocto, you don't have to use Google Docs, and more importantly, you don't have to worry about how to build a platform. The platform's already there. But even in a scenario in which you don't want to use VitaDesk, even in a scenario you don't want to be a part of it, or you're not even part of the Vita network in your case, or just a partner organization, but something you cannot absolutely forget about putting in the application platform is you need to get as much information as possible from the participants from the get-go. And this will save you a lot of time down the road. So personal details, of course. Put the essay questions there immediately as a specific field. Create a specific field for them to submit their CV. Make sure that they don't have to email you anything. Keep the email spam to a minimum because it will be absolutely devastating. So use the formulary for that. There's a lot of tools that allow you to submit the CV immediately. Even with Google Forms that already sends everything to a Google folder, makes your life way easier. Motivational letter the same. Create a specific field for the motivational letter, for the essays. And remember to have a special differentiated aspect for the social fund if you have it. If you have a social fund, and it's in my case, in my year we centralized also the social fund, removed the email part, and we simply added the social fund as a category in the application form itself. So participants, if you want to create a social fund or anything of that sort, it's important that participants can apply for that social fund immediately when they're applying for the conference as a whole. not have two separate deadlines. So they apply for the conference and they already know that there is a social fund and they're already applying as well for that social fund, so when they know the result of the application, they also know if they have a social fund or not. That eliminates the response, that eliminates the situation of, well, I'm sorry, Mr. Teixeira, I really don't know if I can attend because I haven't received my response from the social fund. So it creates complication, tensions, you lose time, there's emails, there's precious hours that you don't have to spend. So the forms can really save your life when it comes to a lot of stuff.
So a very important notion to have when you don't have 600 participant applications like Strasbourg is that people are not very good at keeping communication channels open. So each step you need to ask participants for information, you lose participants. Okay? You have to be very, very aware of this. Each time you send them a different form or a different request or blah, 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 you are going to lose some of them. Because they forget to read email, because they did not see it, because they only seen it too late and they think it's over, blah, blah, blah. You are always losing participants. So you have to keep the forms to a minimum. You have to keep the information requests to a minimum. And a good application form is how you can achieve this in the best way. Because if you design the questions properly, if you ask for all the relevant information, you already have 90-something% of what you will need from the get-go. So if you have a logistics form 2 weeks before the event, it's no problem because they have already paid, so they are already invested in the project if they are selected. But leave that only for the information that you will only need on those 2 weeks. Because each step you need them to fill out something, you lose participants. So it's very important that you get to know them and you get a very strong idea of who each of these guys are from this.
A very important follow-up, which is, then we'll go to your question, I think you have a question. A very important detail is making sure that when you build this application form, insert immediately a field, do you need a visa? From which country? Because people from outside the EU have normally a 90% dropout rate because they don't get visas in time. And this takes me to my next point, which is something that MEU Sofia did very well and that I think we should replicate everywhere. Do applications on a rolling basis. Don't do it like Strasbourg, which is we wait until the end of the application period to actually start evaluating, start sending out replies. Start sending out replies on a rolling basis. Why? Precisely because of the people that need an answer the most on an early an early answer the most, which are people that need to require visas. The earliest you can get to them and say you have been accepted. Now please go get your visa. These are the contact information for the relevant embassy. Please contact them. And anything we can provide you with assistance. Have your visa letters already ready and draft them so you can send them immediately to the selected applicant, because that will also create more emails, more fuss, more problems. So when a participant is accepted, make sure it's still within the application process. Make sure they're the first ones out. Make sure that they already have the visa letter ready, that you give them the contact information, because otherwise they will spam you for every single detail that I've just described. And that you lose time, they will lose time, and at the end, 90% does not make it to the conference, and you'll have to replace people you really did not want to replace. The example of Lisbon, the Minister of Germany. And we all know how that went. So, anything you want to add on this?
No, it's pretty much... Oh, also, coordinate with content team to design good essay questions, because that's how you have a strong idea of who the best participants are, who the best participants are at thinking on their feet, which is important for some roles too. So it's important to have good questions to get good answers for you to be able to do a good job at role distribution.
Two quick comments. First,
yes.
Second. Yes.
It's a question. What do you think about putting dietary requirements and accommodation issues in the primary application form?
Preferable, but we're going to get into that. There can be a separate logistics form later, because there are other things you might also ask. But dietary requirements definitely should already be there.
That's ideal.
Because you need to book hostels, you need to most of the times book already in advance the meals. So that will save the LST team a whole lot of trouble if you already put it out there. Accommodation issues, that depends, but I don't think is one of the problems that you should put immediately. Especially leave it for the LST form, which is something that we're going to talk about later on, which is something where you can ask something a little bit more detailed even, not just actual let's say, health reason requirements, but inclusively preferences. Sometimes participants like to stay with friends or like to stay with someone they know. That's something that can be dealt later on and shouldn't bother your time until the application has been concluded and the selection has been.
Because if you get the specific,
but you
then you're
mentioned
gonna get
before that like the people you like the cost participation fee, the people you accept actually depends. Either they might need or might need not accommodation, or I
yeah, if they need accommodation or not, yeah, definitely. Because for that there's two separate fees. So that you already know from the get-go.
Yeah, but that's included in the form. I mean, they state
So
if they
this
want
is my
accommodation
question.
or not.
Should it be in the
yeah, of
form?
course.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
Of course.
just the specifics of roommates and blah blah blah. You
Oh,
should
no,
leave
I
it
meant
for
just
the,
like overall.
for the last form,
No, of
because even in the interaction in the groups, they will generate new preferences. And if you ask it too soon, then you're gonna get emails from them.
Yeah,
So-
we're getting into this later. So.
Yes.
Yeah, actually, it's also first comment I wanted to make was something, but it's also about the accommodation thing. But first about the visa thing. What we do in Brussels is actually we also have basically always actually 2 rounds of applications, but because we also ask like, are you from outside of EU and do you need a visa? Regardless of when is the application, when we see that, we immediately treat it. So it's a rolling basis, exceptionally if the applicant is from outside of EU, because then, like you said, they will ask for every detail for the visa, and that's I think it's a good solution rather than a rolling basis for everyone, because rolling basis, especially for like EU, like with the quota as well, like you don't really know when there will be the spike of the tension. Now about accommodation, actually what we do in Brussels is we actually already asked them there, but it's like an optional question. Like in the Google form, it's not obligatory, you know. Do you need an accommodation or not? But they can skip the question. And also, how do you say that? Not ETA, like that. No, like estimated, like from when to when are you gonna be in Brussels, something like that.
Oh,
Right in there as well, but it will be confirmed again, obviously, when we send out like the application, the acceptance. But also, what I really wanted to say about like the 2 stages of application is that usually the extension really works well for like local applicants, which again, the ones that don't need accommodation and where you can actually make a profit. Because they're like, oh yeah, I just heard from my friend, etc. And like, oh, it's 2 days from now, I still have papers, blah, blah, blah. And then you extend, and then specifically in the second round, especially in Brussels, we focus more on like Netherlands, Belgium, France, like the ones that's closer and easier to come, basically.
Thanks. On that. Yes, that's a very important point. And when it comes to accommodation, we basically our approach has been, and it's something we'll talk about. We can do it later, but normally there was something which is called, it was in Strasbourg and we replicated in Lisbon, which is the LST form. And we'll go into more detail because these are details that you can only really get when participants have already been accepted and they've probably booked their flights. So it's always something that's better to ask later, so that you don't duplicate channels, you don't create double information. Marco, yes?
With MEU Toronto, we have a sort of list of locals that we can use in case of a last minute drop off.
Oh yeah.
Drop off.
Yeah, we're gonna get that.
We'll get
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Christina, you want to say something?
Okay, so next slide, please, Marco.
Yes, sir.
So, pineapple.
What? I said yes, sir. You said pineapple.
That's the question.
Well, we've been over most of this, but again.
Basically, when it comes to, remember that a participants coordinator should not be a lone wolf. And this is not just about coordination. It is a very demanding workload that you definitely don't have to carry alone. So when it comes to absolutely essentials of the selection, it is up to you, because only you can have this general overview who the participants are, and already in your mind start seeing the scale of the quality of them. The CV, the motivation, and their own general profile is something that you and you alone can evaluate. When it comes to the content part, the best thing for you to do is to delegate that on the content team if you have a good content team. If not, at least definitely involve the head of content and preferably the commissioners into this so they can actually grade the answers as well. Again, it's assessing in Strasbourg, it's assessing in Lisbon. It's better if you can really divide the workload in places where it's not really essential. So if someone else can actually grade the essays, and you at the end just give a quick review, and you say, okay, this essay's kind of fine, I don't agree with this grade, we just change it a bit here and there, you can do it. But it's very, very easy if you don't have to really read every single essay of every single participant. Even if you have a participants coordination team of 2 people maybe helping you, even that is going to become very, very difficult. So make sure you distribute that workload. And of course, make the process transparent. The worst thing for an MEU is to be created this reputation that this exists for your friends. It's to create the idea that sometimes you get preferential treatment just because you being the DG and your best friend somehow gets Minister of Germany, and somehow this other person that no one really recognizes any competence shows up in a very, very high prestigious role. So the best way to avoid that from the get-go is making sure that everyone knows in the team, because believe me, that will filter out eventually, that the process is transparent, and make sure everyone has access. So even though only you can edit and only you can access certain areas of the form, make sure the entire team can keep check of who is applying, on who is doing, and of course, make the selection results as non-revealing as possible, so that no one can leak out, okay, you've been selected, they haven't told you right, they're going to book your flights. Make sure that doesn't happen, but when it comes to actually selecting, make sure it's an open, transparent process. So after the selection is made, everyone can see which grade was given, everyone can see why, what's the motivation. This really helps to create a reputation of an MEU, and at the end of the day, it really helps if there's the back check of a head of content, if there's you, there's the DGs also giving input. This creates also a better selection overall. So, next slide, and next slide. So go about selecting participants, and you have to do that to the new schedule. Okay, still about 15 minutes, so you can go ahead, Miguel.
Okay, so you have to distribute the available spots of the roles. So first, participants choose 2 roles they would like to apply to. So just one important rule: don't put a participant in a place where he did not apply. And sometimes even the second best role for them is questionable. It happened to us in Lisbon actually. A girl just refused to get accepted in her second choice because, oh no, I'm only interested to be an MEP. If I'm not, then I would like to leave. So yes, red line: do not put participants where they don't want to be. So this is where you get your pool of ministers, your pool of MEPs, your pool of journalists, and your pool of lobbyists. Then, after, you select the best of them, but of course, as Erasmus Plus, want to make your comment?
Erasmus Plus, basically, you have to apply for the quota. So basically, look at this as a whole intellectual system in which you have a specific list for each country. So if Italy has 12 spots, if Malta has 1, and Portugal has 7, you have to select the participants. Not just in general, not just in a general list, but you also need to take into consideration that participants need to be chosen on a country basis. So it might perfectly well happen that if Italy has 60 applications and you can only take 12, that 13th member coming in from Italy will not be selected, even though he's definitely way more qualified than the first participant selected for Slovenia. But that's the quota. You need people from all over the place, and at the end of the day, if you are doing Erasmus Plus, these, let's call it injustices may happen, which not all participants, which are the most qualified, the most experienced, the most capable, the best essays, will be selected, because they are a country of residence, and you have to respect the spots for that specific country of residence. So you have to keep that in mind. If you want Erasmus Plus, then you can do it pretty much how you want it. And
so in Erasmus Plus, the pools that are most important are the nationality pools, because you have to fill the quota. If you don't, then just go on merit and just see who in the people eligible for ministers, who are the best, and blah blah blah. And of course, when you have social fund, which can happen outside of Strasbourg, you also have to think about that. I mean. Of course, paying if 2 participants are equally good, but one of them does not require social fund, as sad as it may sound, well, finance rules tell you to choose the profitable guy. That's also true for the accommodation versus non-accommodation thing that we've all discussed, because of course you have to be sure of the sustainability of the event. because otherwise next year there might not be any participants or any event to choose participants to. So this is always very important to keep in mind when choosing the best role.
So selection of special roles. You need to coordinate with your special coordinators. It's important if you have lobbyists, if you have interpreters, if you have political support officers in Scotland, if you have chairs, you need to make sure you coordinate with those specific members, because they will make the selection on themselves. And these particular participants, besides the regular criteria, if they're good enough, they are to be selected ultimately by their specific coordinator. So we need to allow these coordinators total leeway in order to determine who their lobby should be. Of course, you need to inform them of the quota, and quota must be respected at all times. They should enforce the quota if you have Erasmus Plus, but the ultimate choice relies on the coordinator of lobbyists, interpreters, journalists, blah, 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 blah.
Also, you have a more reduced number of participants in each one of these roles. So a bad participant would have a much bigger impact on these positions than on the parliament or on the council. So you really should give them some priority in choosing the people that are interested in being one of these roles, because they really can't stand to have bad participants, because their team would suffer as a whole. So that's something that you as participants coordinator have to be very conscious of too. So next.
Yeah. Next. Oh, that's right. Fantastic. So, selecting participants. So you launch a call in your team for the essay markers. So if you're Strasbourg, you have enough people. If you have a good content team, rely only on the content. If you don't have a content team, then rely rely on your team, as long as there are people with definite capability to evaluate the essays. As you said, classifying up into the residents, and very importantly, get exact figures of the current EPC distribution. BETA actually has an Excel model that allows you to calculate the exact percentage of MEPs according to the current seating distribution to your conference. So just input the number of participants that you have, and you immediately get the calculation of how many people per faction you should have to the country. So you get everything proportionally. So this solves your work it makes your work far easier, and actually gives you a complete insight on that. So again, a lot of stuff is invented. So that's for help. So next, future ministers and faction leaders. So go ahead.
So then, after you've pretty much seen what are the participants that you're going to work with, then you have to rank them. So when quotas have already been discussed, and then when you have your number of participants, you then select the ministers, okay? Because again, since the council is an organ with much less members than the parliament, they also can't stand to have a lot of bad members. So your priority should be to fill the council with quality participants, so that they can produce a healthy and functional discussion. So you put the 28 ministers there. Deep specific knowledge is one of the best criteria. So the best essays in terms of information are a very good clue to good ministers, because they have research, they know what they're talking about, and therefore they can produce a very good discussion. And then you move to the parliament, and in the parliament you have to fill the smaller parties first, with people that you've seen in their experience, in their essay, in their CV, that they are dynamic people, lively, with ideas, with a will to mix things up, to get things moving. If you put these people, this kind of people, in these three parties, the ENF, EFD, and GWE, NGL, you're going to have a lively discussion. Because you're going to have dissenting points of view, you're going to have different ideas, you're going to have plot twists, you're going to have alliances, you're going to have a lot of different things that always enrich the discussion there in the parliament. Afterwards, the rest of the best participants can go to the bigger parties, where it's pretty much a team effort to lead the discussion.
Yeah, basically make sure when you're selecting them, make sure that you have good representatives at least for each faction, because you need to already start predicting who's going to be faction leader, who's going to be faction secretary. You need to make sure that factions are equally proportionate. Because we all know if you have a big parliament like Lisbon with 70 MEPs, like Strasbourg with 90 MEPs, you're going to have a situation in which yes, there are 70 people in the room, but let's face it, only about 20 of them are really engaging in the debate. The other does the role of backbenchers, just like in real parliament. So when you're selecting, to make sure that EPP gets at least 3 very, very solid candidates that can really control that faction and give a very good contribute. Some weaker participants who aren't that experienced, that can learn from these more experienced participants should go to these factions. And the same happens with smaller factions, because at the end of the day, this is an experience of learning. And people should be able to learn in order to feel motivated to contribute to the conference, but also to contribute to the conferences that are coming afterwards. And if you just pack, like some unfortunate lady said in the United States, a basket of deplorables in the EPP faction because no one's going to see them during the conference, and like that you can just give the show to the good ones. That's not helpful for the conference. So make sure that everyone really can learn as much for the conference, everyone can contribute as much as they can possibly can by distributing them in the parliament. Always keeping it balanced. So next slide, please. So country allocation. That's when you need to give the real overview when it comes to the essays and the text. Some people should mark them, yes, for content. But you as participants coordinator should also always look for specific details that tell you what's their political orientation, what's their ideas. Also, of course, their CV and their actual experience. Because the first rule in MEU is you should never represent your own country, you should never represent your own faction. So we should put people always in the most contradictory role as possible. Because the whole idea is a learning experience. So make sure that they get to be in someone else's shoes. Make sure they can understand what's the point of view from a different perspective. That's what this is all about. So always go that extra mile to make sure that people don't end up representing just what they already believe in, that they end up doing what they already know. Make them research about the country they've never heard of. Make them represent that party that they would never thought they would be seen speaking in public for. Make that happen, because at the end of the day, participants will be more enriched and they will thank you for it.
It's your job as head of participants coordination to get all those subtle clues. I mean, if you see someone as a member of a federalist association, guess where they will end up being? In Eurosceptical, of course. And all this also is true for the council. So if you see someone with a very strong stance, with a very strong support for a specific group of countries or a specific idea in those topics, they're going to be on the opposite side. So it's your job to take all the subtle cues, to search participants, to scout participants almost, to be sure that they get the best participation, and also it's a way to foment, to provoke people to interact, to get different points of view, and it ends up with a better result as a whole in the end of the conference.
And of course, waiting list. Waiting list, very important, because you don't get to the dropouts, but always make a sizable waiting list, proportional, of course, to the size of your conference. But if you have a small conference, never inferior to 20. If you have a medium-sized, bigger conference, never inferior to 50. Because I promise you will exhaust every single last one. In the case of Lisbon was 15 people that dropped out in the space of 48 hours.
Yes.
In the case of Strasbourg, we had a waiting list of 50. In a week, we went through all of it, and we still had 10 people less in the parliament that we should have.
And we had 5 participants in Lisbon that actually dropped out during the event because they had personal problems, or they got sick, or I don't know. So, local participants on the waiting list are, again, a great help. Because as Marco was saying a little while ago, those local participants are usually more flexible in terms of their application terms. So that's it.
Please remember, be ready for that. Have a lot of people, accept more people than you actually need. And if you have a small conference, don't be too strict on the application requirements. Don't kick people out on the basis of a very tight selection. You will need them later. Remember, at least 50% of the people that apply eventually drop out or can't come. So prepare for that, be ready, and make sure, because then the hostel is going to have a huge problem to solve.
A small trick, rejection emails are usually a bad idea when you don't have that much applicants, because after the rejection email, it's not really comfortable for you to send an acceptance email. So if you just leave them hanging for a bit, then you can come back to them when you need them.
So next slide, please. So in terms of content, we'll go into detail on this in the whole content workshop. But basically coordinate with them to make sure that these things are out. Preparation guides, preparation platform to allow the content in content preparation. We'll go into and position papers. Make sure they're out. Next slide. Let's go through this now. Logistics. Coordinate with LSC to design a logistics form. This is the important part. By the time you already have your accepted pool of applicants, you already know they're coming, the flights are booked, it is very, very unlikely that at least 10 to 20 people, more than that, will drop out. Then you're in a condition to ask really critical information. Like you said, date of arrival, date and time of arrival, date and time of departure, and the room distribution, send the final timetable and conference guide adapted to the actual people you know or expect they will be at the conference, and importantly, Eurofeast. If you're a small conference, you should always do the Eurofeast, because it's literally a one night of meals and booze that you won't have to pay for. It's provided. So always do that. Small.
But
2 minutes.
But you have
2 minutes. So, tools for doing so. Creating Facebook groups, info mails, rules of conduct. Make sure you have rules of conduct drafted, and make sure the participants accept to it via an online form or even a printed form when they arrive. Because if something gets broken, if someone gets pissed, you need some grounds in order to tell participants it's your fault. And the best thing there is a piece of paper that they actually sign saying, I oblige to the rules of conduct of this event, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, and especially if you get in case of Portuguese Parliament, you don't want people wandering around and getting told off by the people of the Parliament saying you're improperly dressed, or you shouldn't go to that room, or you shouldn't be at that door, and these things happen. So in some cases it's not really serious, but sorry the expression, shit does go down, you need to have something to say, participant, you're out of the conference because of this, this, and that. So it's always a good idea.
And also refunds politics is very important. I mean, if you have a very clear refund policy, you will need to address that later, because you'll have participants dropping out a week before the event asking for refunds, because it's not fair that you charge them money without coming. So you have to be very clear with that when they apply.
So
atmosphere.
Next question, yeah.
Yes. The event will be as successful as the atmosphere between the people that are attending. So that was actually one of the strong points in Lisbon. And how do you foment that as a participants coordinator? You have the Facebook groups, and you are present in all of them. So it's a very good idea for you to have a notion of who each participant is, to try to interact with them, to create discussion, to encourage people to discuss things, to tell about their hobbies, to tell about blah blah blah, because it will get participants to talk with each other before the conference. And if they are confident with each other before the conference, during the conference they will be more at ease to talk about their views, their proposals, their amendments, their everything. So this work that you do before the conference in getting a group feeling, you're going to get every bit of this effort back during the conference, because you will have a more tightly knit group, and they will be able to produce more meaningful results.
And if you have very tight venues like the European Parliament or the Portuguese Parliament, you'll get praised by your hosts, because they will say it's the most tight group and more coordinated group I've ever seen in my life. And that probably guarantees you the venue for next year. So do invest in that. The human touch is.
Then having a WhatsApp group as participants coordinator is very interesting, because you can relay announcements to people in a very quick way, because everybody's glued to their phones all the time. So it's very easy for you to say, we should be at X place now, or we need X, or I want you to do X until this hour. So it's even more practical than Facebook to do quick announcements. Of course, official announcements can have to be made via email or via Facebook at worst case scenario, but those quick day-to-day stuff you can relay by WhatsApp. So it's important to have the WhatsApp numbers on the logistics form when you send it.
And the human touch. As a participant coordinator, you'll get to know each person's name, face, or both by heart. And you will do it by reviewing the applications. And by the time the conference arrives, you'll finally put a face to the name and a name to the face. And it's important that you treat people by their names, it's important that you be with them, that you care about their well-being, because this is what keeps people coming back, and this is what makes the difference. An organizing team that is approachable, that is sociable, that is engaging with participants, it allows them to feel comfortable, feel safe, and express their needs or their discomfort about anything at all times. That makes the experience more comfortable for everyone, and it makes for organizers even better to address the situation. So this is a very, very important element. So essentially, organizers buy drinks to participants, participants buy drinks to organizers. Next slide. So after the conference, to finish, when this is all over, get verbal feedback. Understand what's your strong suits, what's your weak spots. Make sure that participants get a voice and they're comfortable by the experience that they had to express what the problems are. So set up a participant survey for that. When it comes to the Erasmus Plus, well, you have to provide a final report in terms of the quota. and of course keep in touch with participants as much as possible, because you as an essential figure will be there for them.
So you represented the event, so you have an essential liaison role for the next for the team of next year, because the national guys can apply to the team of next year, and also as for the next edition of the event, where it's always good to have experienced people. So you are the key person to keep that connection, to keep that communication rolling.
Yeah. From coordination, you'll go to a PR officer basically for next year's edition, and that's how you get organizers for next year's edition. You keep them asking to come back, especially if you have a lot of people from your own country in the conference, which is key to have a sustainable event, a sustainable conference, and a sustainable branch organization running it. So that's pretty much it. Thank you all guys for joining us.